Thank you. Thank you, folks. Thanks for being here tonight. Thank you, Congressman. Thank you, Doctor, for being here. And as you can see, the candidates are here and in place. We're giving them cordless microphones in the hope that they will move about and feel as comfortable as they can under these circumstances. My name is Rich Wheater. I'm the editor of the Times Indicator, a local newspaper. I know that I've seen that many readers in one place before. That's fantastic. Let me take care of some thank yous quickly. On behalf of our sponsors, the River Country Chamber of Commerce and the Times Indicator, I want to thank the members of our question screening committee. They dealt with hundreds of questions and boiled them down to the few that we have time for tonight. That committee included Ken DeLotte, Mark Petz, Jeff Coyle, Scott Faulkner, Colleen Leinema, and me. I'd like to say thank you. Thank you also to the members of Pride of Nuevo County, the Teen Substance Abuse and Violence Prevention team, young people that are mostly over here. We're using their sound equipment tonight, and they also helped set it up. They are shooting pictures for the Times Indicator and supporting me, their friend. And they include Luis Gomez, Samantha Toth, Taylor Mulder, Haley Sanderson, Beverly Kerr, and Regan England. And also as a proud uncle, I'd like to say thanks to one of my favorite nephews, Joe Wheater, for operating the sound system. But wait, there's more. And the Nuevo High School Media Production Team, their teacher, Luke Francis, and students Brandon Sekich, Franklin Byer, and Bree Marvin, who are live streaming and filming and helping us with technological matters. And, oh, yeah, please. And also thank you to Nuevo County's Community Emergency Response Team. They show up virtually everywhere they are needed, and they're here tonight. And also thank you to Nuevo's finest, the officers of the Nuevo Police Department, for their presence tonight. In fact, I think Officer Ryan Dornbos has something to say before we go any further.
All right, thanks for coming out tonight. Real quick, before we get on to tonight's debate, I'm sorry. You can see the exits in case of an emergency. We'll be exiting out the door over here, where you guys came in. We're trying to keep to one exit. Just some things to keep in mind real quick tonight. We want everybody to have fun, enjoy it, and learn some information tonight. So with that in mind, if you're so passionate and feeling about your question that you want to stand up and yell it out loud, we're going to kindly ask you to just sit back down. If you still feel too passionate about it and you want to keep on going, we're going to tell you to sit down. And after that, you're going to come talk to my friends outside and we'll escort you out. So with that, that's all I have to say. Guys, have a great night tonight and good luck to you guys.
More reading to do. The River Country Chamber of Commerce of Nuevo County has a statement on stability. The River Country Chamber of Commerce of Nuevo County is committed to encouraging, creating, and sustaining an environment that honors the inherent dignity of every member of our community. As a community, we welcome a diverse range of perspectives and opinions and uphold the importance of civil debate. We fully support the free exchange of ideas and beliefs, as well as the expression of provocative or less popular ideas. We believe that only through the process of open and honest dialogue can we generate knowledge and deepen our mutual understanding. We believe all members of the community have a responsibility to behave in a manner that does not harm others and shows respect for those with different opinions. Behavior that attacks, humiliates, belittles, or conveys personal hatred towards others diminishes our thriving and safe community environment. Words and actions matter. Everyone is asked to do their part in creating a healthy and positive community and a culture that truly values each person's uniqueness, experiences, and perspectives. It's all right to disagree, but not to be disagreeable. Respectful behavior should always be the norm in all forms of communication and in all situations. Thank you for your respect, your tolerance, and your attendance tonight. This is I might note that this policy was not written, this statement was not written for this evening necessarily. It's just something that the Chamber recently adopted, and thought we should share that. So, again, thank you for being here. Thankful to the candidates for participating. Let's get to the questions. I'm going to betray some ignorance right now. Did we decide who's going first?
I don't think so. Anyone have a coin?
I'm a newspaper editor. I probably don't have any coins. Taylor Muller from Fremont, ladies and gentlemen.
Go ahead.
You want to call it? It's his. You want to kick off or defer? Okay. Yes.
We didn't talk about alternating who goes first on the question.
Yes. Yeah, we're going to alternate that, and we have a timer. She was waving her hand over by the doors. So she's going to give you a signal when you're 30 seconds, when you have 30 seconds left. Yeah.
It's going to have to be a lot bigger than that.
Yeah, stand up and wave it when it's, yeah, there you go.
Sit forward. Move forward.
Yeah. And then another one when your time is done, and you'll notice your microphone starts losing power. Okay? Thank you. Yes, please.
Am I on? Good. Thank you so much. I want to thank the Times Indicator, River Country Chamber, and Newaygo High School, Dr. Peg Mathis, superintendent, who made this space available. I know it was a little bit last minute, but we really felt like both Congressman Heising and myself should have the opportunity to have their supporters, and hopefully people who aren't quite sure yet come out here and listen to us tonight. Actually, we had a good conversation in the hall back there, and I appreciate it, and I think the civility statement really applies because we found that both of our daughters are seniors. Your daughter's starring in Cinderella. My daughter is in a play in Spring Break, The Bad Seed, this week, and you know, it's good to know we're both dads, and so please, I appreciate the civility statement. You know, people who don't know me, my name is Rob Davidson. Of course, that's you're here to see us debate. I'm an emergency doctor just about 12 miles from here in Fremont. Been doing that for 16 years. And, you know, we were going through some time. I'm sure Congressman Heising is, or you told me I could call you Bill. I'm sure Bill's team did as well, called debate prep. You know, you spend some time studying some issues, studying some old votes, kind of thinking of the way you want to articulate an answer in 3 minutes' time. But when I really think about it, my prep for the debate is similar to my prep to run for this office, is similar to my prep for what I think it means to be a representative. As an emergency physician for the last 20 years of my life, I've been preparing by doing 3 basic things. I listen, I have empathy, and I always try to provide service for the patients that I'm taking care of. And I think those are such critical skills. My wife, Diana, who I think might be here by now, she worked tonight as a family physician. She and I went to medical school together, and we learned in medical school 95% of what you need to diagnose a condition in a patient is what they tell you. And so listening is almost the most critical skill you can have. And I practiced that for the past 16 years in this community, in this county. Empathy is something that is so important because the lives of the patients I treat are so different than mine. In a single day in the emergency department, in a night shift, I may take care of someone who's a heroin addict with an overdose, a homeless person, or a CEO of a company. They all have very different experiences in life than I have. And my ability to understand the world through their eyes, to walk in their shoes, is so critical for my ability to actually take care of them. And the last piece is really service. Because if nothing else, I have to provide them with a service. Sometimes it has been saving someone's life. Unfortunately, sometimes it's actually not being able to save their life, but being able to comfort their loved one in that moment that they needed me. Sometimes it's just telling someone that their chest pain isn't life-threatening, that it's heartburn, it's something simple, but giving them the peace of mind they can go home and they can be comforted. Too often it's been trying to find them ways to get their drugs more cheaply, their insulin that they don't have to take every other day because it costs too much. But I really feel like those are skills that are needed as a representative. You have to listen. And I have to be honest, I'm concerned that our congressman hasn't been around much in public for the past 14 months to listen to the people in the district, to know what they need. And the ability to empathize. If you're not listening, you can't possibly understand what's going on in the lives around you. This is the most diverse district in the entire state of Michigan. We think of West Michigan as very monolithic. It is not. Our communities are diverse and people's experiences are diverse. I've learned that here firsthand in Owego County. And empathy is so critical. And if you're not listening, you can't empathize. And the other is service. In this district that is so big, 7 counties up and down the lakeshore, we have one congressional office that's in full-time operation. It's in Granville. A very, very southern, near the southern part, eastern part of the district. There used to be one in Muskegon, it is closed. I'm concerned that the people along the lakeshore, the people in the northern parts of the district like this, have less access to their member of Congress to go talk to their staff, to have their questions answered. So, the listening, the empathy, the service that is required, I'm very concerned it hasn't been there for the people of the district. It's something that I've been training for unknowingly for this position really for most of my adult life. And it's something that I think I can bring to representing the people of West Michigan. Thank you.
Well, I want to say thank you for being here, and Rich with the newspaper, and our friends from the chamber, thank you for organizing this. Thank you for being here. I guess I want to start off with the notion of service as well. This is something that's been in my family since literally the day that I can possibly remember. My dad served as city councilman and a county commissioner, small businessman down in Zealand. My mom, my sister, my brother, all have been involved at various levels with serving our community. That was put in really kind of into my DNA, I think, right from the very beginning. And I didn't necessarily think that I would be doing this at this stage of life. I always had this idea that I would go and have some sort of career, and then later on maybe I would go and try to do it. And by the way, my aspiration was to outdo my dad by 1. He was Mayor Pro Tem of Zealand. My dream was to become Mayor of Zealand someday. Well, there's some different plans that came up along the way. And I've had some amazing experiences and opportunities to go, to learn, to serve, and to be a part of this. And this has been the greatest honor of my life, to be out here and to be able to do this. So let's talk a little bit about some of the results, some of the things that we've been working on, some of the things that still need a lot of work to move forward on. But for me, there's some sort of concentric circles that you move out, and it first and foremost starts with this district. And we do agree on something. This is probably the most diverse district, certainly in the state, if not in the entire country, because it's an agriculture district, it's a manufacturing district, it's a suburban, it's an urban, and a rural. Lake County, the poorest county in the state of Michigan. I believe last we looked, it was about 52nd or 53rd poorest county in the nation. Yet we also have some of the wealthiest zip codes in the state of Michigan. And going along and serving people at all kinds of levels, I first want to say thank you to my staff. A couple of them are here. They are on their own time, and they came up. And I just want to say thank you to them, because they really are where the rubber hits the road, where it's fixing a VA problem, or somebody's Social Security, or the things that are going on. I can tell you, as a former staffer myself, here's one of the reasons why we have seen the effectiveness of these folks increase. It's because of technology and the accessibility that is there. That is paramount to what we're doing. So some of the things that we've been working on, making sure that there is work here in the district being done on those issues. Great Lakes being the #1 issue that we deal with, along with agriculture. I co-chair the Great Lakes Task Force. I'm the Republican co-chair with a woman, Marcy Captor, out of Ohio. I've been fighting for the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, making sure Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund is happening. Things like getting infrastructure for the Sioux locks. Doing that to make sure that we are protecting both the ecology and the economy of the Great Lakes. The other thing that we've been working on is making sure that our men and women who have served this country, when they come back home, that they're getting taken care of, especially with their mental health needs. Not all those injuries that occur are on the outside. Oftentimes they're on the inside. And we have been working very diligently at making sure that those needs are being addressed. But we've got better to do. All you have to do is look at what's happened with the VA around the country. We happen to have a good VA system in Wyoming, but I wish everybody around the country had what we have here in West Michigan. But it's the economy as well. You look at what is happening, the results that we have had with the upturn in the economy. Unemployment is at record lows, whether it's in the African American, Hispanic communities. We are seeing wages rise. We are seeing opportunity happening. We believe, I believe, that we are on the door of greater opportunity. But there's headwinds. We know that there's headwinds. And it's a competitiveness around the world and making sure that we are able to go and compete with anywhere else in the entire country. In the entire world. That is what I am continuing to work for. So, I ask for your vote. I want your vote again. It's been the pleasure and privilege of my life to be able to serve in this position, and we're going to continue to try to serve the folks here in the 2nd District. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's get started on questions. I will tell you, we know where the questions came from, and the town, I mean. And so I'll share that with you, but let me also tell you that as we reviewed questions, we chose questions typically that came from around the district. So while this first question comes from Holland, essentially the same question was posed by others elsewhere. I guess we decided this one was the best written. So anyways, here's this question is about crime. And with recent social movements, we are becoming aware of how common sexual assault is in our society. How do you plan to better protect your constituents from sexual assault?
All right. So this is a real significant problem for us as a country. And I will share with you, I, like probably almost everybody else in here, knows of friends or family that have been affected directly by this. We need to make sure that victims have their voice be heard. One of my mentors, a guy named Bill Van Riggenwater down in Ottawa County, was the leading voice for the victims' rights movement, and making sure that things, whether it's a statement in the courtroom, making sure that DNA was being actually followed through on, those kinds of things were happening. And way too often we have not seen that. So what we need to do is make sure that we have, because really this is oftentimes about power and control. It's not about other foibles, shall we say. I'm trying to make it polite here in a mixed crowd. It's oftentimes not about sex, it's about power, right? And we need to make sure that those without that voice are empowered. So how do we go and make sure that that is happening? First and foremost, we have to provide security. That's at all levels, whether it's local, state, federal, making sure that prosecutions happen, making sure that there's the resources there to follow through on that. And that is something that I know for those of us at the federal level, it may be with empowering state and local law enforcement through grants. That is some of the things that we have done. So, but at the end of the day, it's about respect. It's about making sure that we're creating an atmosphere that is going to blunt that. And that's what I think we need to be working on in addition to simply those dollars that go into the funding.
So nothing like starting off with a softball question, right? I have to be honest, I've been doing what I do for 20 years. I have unfortunately seen far too many victims of sexual assault. I will tell you, far too many of those too many come into the ER. You want to help them. You want to find whoever perpetrated this crime if it's someone that they don't know, or if they do and they don't want to tell you. The vast majority, I'm talking 90 plus or more %, they don't want to deal with it. They want to go home, crawl into bed, go take a shower, throw away their clothes, and never ever deal with it again. Until 35 years later, when something triggers them. A good friend of mine, Jenny in Muskegon, told me this. She wrote a letter to us that the events that occurred over the Supreme Court hearings triggered her and so many other people. I'm troubled by the fact that we have an executive in charge that mocked the individual who knows something happened and who's very sure who did it. And that I will be honest, we don't know. We didn't have an investigation that was ever intended to find out what actually happened. We had a show. So we need to show leadership when those things come up, show leadership as a representative, as an executive, to point out the flaws in that system. Now I'll tell you the other thing that hits home really here locally. There's a system called sexual assault nurse examiners, okay? We used to have them at Gerber Hospital, we don't anymore. We lost the funding, couldn't afford to do it anymore. The Violence Against Women Act does support some sexual assault nurse examiner programs. That those are experts in getting evidence and talking to individuals who are sexually assaulted. Congressman Heisinger voted against it in 2015, the Violence Against Women Act. This is right there. No, civility, truly. But that's just truth. Women who come into my ER are told, please drive to Big Rapids or drive to Grand Rapids. Now I can tell you what, they don't want to be where they are at that moment. They sure as heck aren't going to be driving an hour north or an hour south. And if we can't support those women, respect is important and police officers are important, but the respect we need to show them, and respect is proven by legislation. Our ideals are borne out by how we vote on important bills. And in that case, I think we can say that.
So, Rich, because we haven't talked about rebuttals or other questions, but I'm going to be able to address that in other question time, correct?
You like?
Yep, okay.
So, question number 2 is about gun control. It comes from Nuevo. What, if any, new restrictions on firearms would you support? And if so, how would you go about making sure that a bill of such type would garner enough support to pass and to become law?
Hey, I guess we're running for Congress. There are no easy questions, right? I've been very clear in my support for legislation that would make our schools safer, our streets safer. There are some very easy things that the vast majority of Americans, including the majority of gun owners, including the majority of NRA members, support. Universal loophole-free background checks on all private sales of guns. No fly, no buy. That makes sense. That seems easy. If you can't fly on our airplanes, you shouldn't be able to own a weapon. Okay. So those are two easy ones. The idea that the CDC can't study gun violence, or couldn't until a little bit this year, they were relaxed a little bit. But when we're told after incidents like Vegas, like the Pulse nightclub, like Parkland, we just need to study it. We need to put the brakes on doing anything drastic. Let's study it, but then you're not empowering your chief mechanism to study public health emergencies in this country to actually study it. That's hypocrisy. Okay, that's absolute hypocrisy. Those are easy things. Bump stocks that turned Vegas into an automatic weapon massacre from the 27th floor. Instead, of something that maybe could have been controlled, maybe a $40 bump stock. And our Congressman and Speaker Paul Ryan said it's something we should discuss, it's something we should study. It never got discussed, it never got studied. So why does that happen? Why does it happen? It isn't because the NRA spends a lot of money. Congressman Heising has only received $10,000 from the NRA, so do not blame the money they spend. It is the power they wield. The NRA does not represent gun owners. I know a number of gun owners, a friend named Craig in North Muskegon, who is a hunter, who doesn't think you need a clip bigger than 5 because that's what he uses to hunt ducks. And he says, I quit the NRA years ago, decades ago, because they don't represent me, they represent manufacturers. They represent industry. They write big checks, but they also come in and run TV ads and send out mailers if you dare cross them, and they get you unelected. And when we have officials that are more afraid of getting unelected than they are of actually decreasing violence, decreasing the number of kids who can get killed in a few seconds, that's a concern. I think the way you garner support is you take that to the people, you lead, you do something that might be unpopular even with some people in your district, but just because it's unpopular, sometimes things that are unpopular are the most important things we need to do. Abraham Lincoln proved that by getting rid of slavery. I mean, we fought a civil war over that and states' rights. It was maybe unpopular with half of the country, but guess what? Important things sometimes are unpopular. It's the job of leaders to take the unpopular and make them possible, to convince the people they represent them. So a couple of quick things, factual things. I actually came out very vocally opposed to bump stocks. It was not something I said needed to be studied or looked at, so if you go back and look at any of the press releases and any of the statements at the time, I came out absolutely opposed to bump stocks. Anything that would convert a semi-automatic weapon into act like an automatic weapon ought to be banned. I think we would all agree with that, right? On a slightly lighter note, you better talk to your friend Craig, because if he's using 5 shots in his duck blind, he's actually violating federal law. It's a 3-shot limit. So they take it very, very seriously. Otherwise, you will have your boat confiscated, your gun confiscated, and the vehicle that you got there in. So any duck hunter actually knows that it's going to be 3 shots or you're out. So as you had said, these are tough, very difficult decisions, very difficult issues that we have to struggle with. I have no problem with an unpopular position. I recognize a number of you from our town hall meetings earlier. That's not a problem holding an unpopular position. What I'm concerned about is holding an unconstitutional position. All right? So, the Constitution reigns supreme in this. And I do want to touch on this because it does tie into VAWA, something that the doctor had brought up, Violence Against Women's Act. I voted against that particular bill because it was unconstitutional. People from Justin Amash, the Libertarian, to people who were supported by the ACLU agreed. And what it did on Indian reservations and a number of other federal facilities and around was unconstitutional. Subsequently, additional bills were proposed, and I voted yes on those. Not because I was against the issue, I was against the unconstitutionality of how they were trying to solve that issue. So, as when we get to the constitutionality of this particular issue, we sometimes have to walk a line. It is a very difficult one at times, but we know that we are out there. So, here's one thing that I am very proud of. The Stop School Violence Act is something that has given local school districts the ability to go in and do a couple of different things. One, physically harden the schools, and unfortunately, this is as much of a societal issue as it is about access issue. The School Violence Act is something that has given local school districts the ability to go in and do a couple of different things. One, physically harden the schools, and unfortunately, this is as much of a societal issue as it is about access issue. Roger Williams, one of the gentlemen who was shot when Steve Scalise was shot, who's a friend of mine, also has a bill that would give the Department of Education direct ability to give grants
to schools to be able to do that. But it's also about mental health. It's probably the most important part. And we've been working to increase that funding and accessibility. And I know my time's up, and I'm sure this will come up more, so thank you.
Thank you. Now on to campaign finance. This question comes from Fremont. Do you think there should be a limit to the amount of money candidates can accept from corporations and special interests, particularly if those donors come from outside of the candidate's district?
So, yeah, campaign finance, so it's corporations and special interests, right?
Yes, particularly if they come from outside the district.
Well, first and foremost, we're back to constitutionality of it, all right? The Supreme Court. I don't know why you guys don't like the Constitution. So it has been ruled free speech, all right? So there are limits. And by the way, I'm sure you'll be hearing this. How about how this has been one of the accusations, how I have billionaires' interests. By the way, I received $2,700 from Rich DeVos before he passed away, which is 20 times less than what the doctor lent himself and gave himself on his own campaign. So there are limits, and it's all reported, all right? By the way, no corporation can give you money or rob money. None of us are allowed to accept that. It's all individual money or PAC money. And when I was a new realtor, as a young guy coming out of college, I went into real estate, all right? I didn't have a whole lot of money. My wife Natalie is right down here as well. We were trying to figure out how we were going to buy our first house, but I knew I wanted to be a part of the political process. So I wrote a small check to the RPAC. Any realtors in here, by the way? There's usually a couple. I see one quick hand that went up, a couple of them. All right, I know another one who said she was going to be here tonight, but she had to go show a house. Good, I hope she sells it. And guess what? My voice, when I wrote that small check as a new realtor, got lumped in with a whole bunch of other realtors. And I was able to then go to events and functions and talk to people on this. And that's how PACs work. Whether it's a union PAC, and by the way, I'm a proud recipient of the Teamsters 406 endorsement. The Teamsters have PACs. Right to Life has a PAC. There are different credit unions and banks and you name it. There's even a few doctor PACs. All right? I noticed the Michigan Nurses Association is on board. So when we start talking about defining who's in and out of the district, I'm pretty sure that not all those realtors or not all those nurses that are supporting us as candidates live specifically within our district. So, I've got 30 seconds left. Does campaign finance reform need to happen? There is a lot that has been done over the years. Disclosure, transparency, and sunshine is the best antiseptic to any of this. And that is the type of system that we have. Do I believe that McCain-Feingold should be improved and refined? Absolutely, because there are some real problems with it, and it needs to get better. But transparency has got to be the key element. My time's up.
So I did loan my campaign loan money. We paid some back because we had a really good quarter last quarter. You loaned your first campaign money. You paid it back after you won. That's candidates do when you're a first-time candidate. And so I'm proud of that. And that's, as candidates who fund their own campaigns. So the question here is it constitutional or should it be legal? I think the question is, who is paying the bills of the person who's serving you in Congress, and does that influence the way that individual votes? We're supposed to be serving you. We're supposed to be serving 730,000 people in this district. I don't care where people get money from, I really don't. I have taken a vow, and hold the applause to a small one because I need more time. I've taken a vow never to take a corporate PAC check. Never. I haven't. I won't. And I don't think that it is illegal or unconstitutional for corporate PACs to give checks to members of Congress. The problem is we have to then examine, how does that influence the votes? Do the corporate PAC checks, $500,000 worth from Wall Street banks, influence a member of Congress, Congressman Heisman, who was one of 29 members of Congress, revealed in an August 10th Fox Business story that wrote a letter to Quarles, the vice chair of the Federal Reserve, starting to get wonky, wrote a letter to say, you know, we think some of those protections after the collapse of 2008 and 9 need to be relaxed a little bit. Those $700 billion in bailout that we gave to Wall Street banks where nobody went to jail, we think those banks just need a break because, you know, they're hurting, even though Jamie Dimon made $22 million last year and JP Morgan Chase had a 24% increase in their profits. Even though the banking bill that was just passed, signed or voted yea by Congressman Heisman, relaxed some of the restrictions of Dodd-Frank. And at first I was very against it, but then I saw the details and it said, okay, originally Dodd-Frank said up to $50 billion in banks, you have to, you can kind of, you know, give money, you don't have so many restrictions or protections put in place. And the new bill went up to $250 billion. Well, I said, okay, that's a little high, maybe $100 billion. Well, guess what? Immediately it went to $100 billion. There's a 1.5-year phase-in for the next 100 to 250 billion in assets, the bigger banks. Congressman Heisman on September 28th of this year was one of 29 members of Congress who wrote a letter to the same Federal Reserve and said, you know, we think those bigger banks should have no longer have those protections. So it isn't about where you're getting the money, like that's fine. I do think we need publicly financed elections. I think the time has passed for that. I don't think that will get passed because too many Democrats and Republicans take a lot of money from corporate PACs. But in this election, because we're running against one another, one person, Congressman Heisman, has taken over $1 million from corporate PACs this year, votes on behalf of corporate interests, and one has not. Thank you.
Let's talk about the environment. This question is from Petwater. How will you protect Michigan's fresh water supply? For example, Line 5, Nestle, pollution, Asian carp, farm runoff, and etc. Yes.
Okay, wow, 3 minutes. You know, I hate to always be talking about the other person, but there's a little bit there. Now, I have been endorsed by Clean Water Action, okay? My opponent has a 0% scorecard for Clean Water Action. I've been endorsed by the Sierra Club. Sierra Club didn't score anyone, but the League of Conservation Voters gave Congressman Heisman a 0% for 2017 and a 4% lifetime, lowest than any person in Michigan. Congressman Heisman talks about the Great Lakes Initiative. That's great, we do. We need to protect we need to keep harbor money here. We need to protect our Great Lakes from Asian carp. But then how do we protect the actual water? What do we do? Well, in the Farm Bill in the Senate, they have $100 billion for water conservation. In the House version, they have 0. Senator Stabenow, our senior senator, has voted and supported in a bipartisan way the Senate version of the Farm Bill. Congressman Heisman opposes that, voted for the House version, the water conservation. There have been specific instances where the water in Lake Michigan was put at risk by actions of Congressman Heisman. When the SS Badger in Ludington wanted a lifetime exclusion on dumping coal ash in Lake Michigan, I think it was 2013, it might have been 2014, Congressman Heisman went there and advocated for and petitioned for a lifetime exclusion for them to be able to dump coal ash into our lake. They didn't get the lifetime, they got an extension. It cost them $2.4 million to store it on the ship and then dump it when they got to shore. Okay, I don't know, $2.4 million. It isn't their entire budget, and they stayed in business. And yet, the owner of the SS Badger was a contributor to Congressman Heisman's campaign. I mean, again, these are the concerns I have. When we want to protect the water, we have to do everything we can to protect the water. We can't cut funding and try to undermine the Clean Water Act. I was a biology major, I'm a science person. What's in the air affects what's in the water, and when we attack the Clean Air Act, we know that we're impacting our Great Lakes. And so I think absolutely count on me as a member of Congress to put the sanctity of Lake Michigan on our western border of our district of the utmost importance. Not only because I love clean water and I want my kids to drink clean water, but our economy of this district depends on that clean water. If Lake Michigan goes, if Line 5 blows, Grand Haven is done. Pentwater is done. Ludington is done. The economy of this district is so dependent on those lakes that if we do anything to undermine their ability to generate their economic activity, if you've ever been to Grand Haven in February, it's a ghost town. We go there on purpose in February to support the local economy. If we lose Lake Michigan, it's a ghost town year-round, and I will not have that. Thank you.
So we know that special interest groups on all sides go in and they look at what their mission and the message that they want to drive, and then they go in and they do pick votes that support that message or that mission. So I have received actually awards from both the National and the State Nature Conservancy for my work and what I've done. There is nobody that can hold a candle to the work that I have done on the Great Lakes with the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. Marcy Kaptur, who's my Democrat co-chair, has told the Cleveland Plain Dealer that nobody has done, no Republican has done what I have done for the Great Lakes since Bill Purcell. And you older folks that have been working on this issue for a while, she compared me to Bill Purcell. All right, and the work that we've been able to do. I've gone in, and you're not going to like this, but I battled the Obama administration to make sure that it was fully funded, and I've battled the Trump administration to make sure that the GLRI is fully funded, and I'll continue to do that. So, Line 5, that is getting taken care of. That was I assume you've heard about the billions of dollars that are going to be getting spent on what is happening with the Mackinac Bridge Authority is going to be owning the tunnel that's going to be going underneath. The work that other utilities that are going to be going in there, I believe that is someone put it as an elegant solution to a very difficult problem. Because if you are in the UP and in northern lower Michigan, you will know that that has been also a vital line to making sure that the heating oil and other assets that are needed are up there. But we need to address that, and I'm glad that they are doing it, and we're going to continue to push on that. The economy and the ecology of the Great Lakes is paramount. If you came into my office, you would see awards from, as I said, the Nature Conservancy as well as the Great Lakes Shippers Association, because they know that I cross the party lines and I go to try to find real solutions that aren't window dressing in all of this, and that are actually going to fulfill the intent and the purpose. And I think I've got a little bit of time left here, and because I do want to address one other element of what was brought up on the campaign finance. Go look at my finance reports, and whether I'm an independent thinker or not, there's particular donors that in the past had given to me, and when I said no to them, specifically Boeing and GE, the committee I serve on is something called the Export-Import Bank, which I think should not be in existence with its current the way it's currently constituted, and I'm going to continue to be that independent voice. It doesn't matter to me who is donating, it matters to me how we are voting.
And now on to healthcare. You knew that was coming, right? Here's a question from Grant. Although again, we received the same, essentially the same question from across the district. How can we assure adequate and affordable health care for all residents of Newaygo County and of course the rest of this beautiful congressional district?
I imagine that we are probably going to revisit this issue at some point, and this is a crucial element of what we've been dealing with since the very day that I got in. That was in 2010. That was frankly, there has been a significant response, and based on the folks that you brought along with you, this isn't going to be popular. But I believe that Obamacare was a massive overstep and overreach by the federal government. Someone who I was chatting with, actually from the medical field about this, told me, he said, you know, every complicated issue has a simple, quick, and wrong answer to it. And Obamacare was the wrong answer for a very real problem. And we need to go, and we'll continue to work on that. The House Republicans have put out various plans. This is one of those. You can download this as well. We'll have this getting tweeted out. This isn't anything new. Go to the House Republican Conference. You're going to be able to find that out. I believe that we need to make sure that affordable, better health care is actually available. And what we saw with the implementation of the ACA, quote-unquote Obamacare, is that we had access that was restricted to those that who had insurance. Their premiums went up, their deductibles went up, their choices for their own health care went away. And that's one of the reasons why I've had a significant amount of support out of the medical field. Whether it's been nurses, PAs, doctors, they have looked at it, and a couple of them are here tonight. They've looked at it, and they've looked at some of the solutions that have been proposed by Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and my opponent. And they looked at this and said, this isn't going to work either. So how we can possibly move forward with this notion that spending $32 trillion over 10 years, or $3.2 trillion, addition to what we have, you're not going to be able to tax the American people enough to pay for that. You simply aren't. And before you hear about the Mercatus Center study, the Washington Post gave the position that my opponent put out, 3 Pinocchios, that this is somehow going to save money. All right? The Urban Institute in 2016 said this is going to be over $30 trillion. The Mercatus Center said it's going to be over $30 trillion. The simple fact is that some of the solutions, quote unquote, that are being proposed instead of Obamacare are even worse than what Obamacare was.
So, first, one person came with me, Chris grew up here, so I didn't bring anyone else here. Okay, so you all know how I got in this. I got in this because of a town hall in Baldwin last February. I stood up and healthcare is near and dear to my heart. I've been doing it for 20 years of my life. And I'm tired of seeing people come in, the woman who's 30 years old making $30,000 a year with a $13,000 deductible having an argument with me or a discussion for 15 minutes about a test I want to order because it costs too much. Because the CAT scan costs too much, you can't do that. Or even the simple things, like a gentleman with a $2,500 deductible wanted to avoid an x-ray. And we avoided it, but we had to have a few extra precautions put in place, but these are the decisions people make. The man on chemotherapy came in for the 3rd time in 5 weeks, and the 3rd time he came in, we had to admit him because of dehydration because he was so sick. And I said, why did you wait so long to come in? He said, you know, Doc, it's $250 every time I come in here. That's a lot of money. And these things happen over and over and over, and it's like a constant drumbeat. And you say, there has to be a better solution for this. My best solution I can think of, and there are a lot of ways to get there, and there are a lot of hybrid ideas out there that we can talk about in more than 3 minutes, is expanded and improved Medicare for all.
Yes.
Expanded and improved Medicare for all does a few things beautifully. It saves Medicare. You may hear later, we heard it from Mike Bishop against Alyssa Slotkin, we heard it from others, President Trump put it in USA Today, op-ed that was then shown to be completely false, that Medicare for all means Medicare for none. I will tell you this, Medicare for all saves Medicare. Medicare is the most efficient, most effective payer of healthcare in this country. It has the most expensive people for healthcare in this country in it. If we include my 17-year-old daughter, my 14-year-old son, and anyone in here who isn't on Medicare, who doesn't have all of the health expenditures of Medicare, we make it better. The Mercatus Center, yes, $32 trillion. The status quo over 10 years, $34 trillion. That's a savings of at least $2 trillion. Now, there's been other studies by a man, Himmelfarb in New York, a PNHP founder, and he says it's maybe an $8 trillion savings. So maybe it's somewhere in between, but either way, we get cheaper health care, it saves Medicare, we don't have to tax everyone out. You know what we do? We take the Medicare payroll tax, we bump that up a few percent, 97% of people pay less with Medicare for all. If you're making $227,000 a year or less, you pay less. No co-pays, no deductibles, and 28 million people without health insurance.
Here's a short question from Shelby. How will you support better public education?
I think I'm first, yeah. So most of you know, some of you know, I'm a public school board member. My kids all go to public schools. I think it's critically important that we ensure there are good public schools. Not only in Spring Lake, where I'm from, but in Owego, in Muskegon Heights, in districts where it's a challenge to provide your kid with a quality public education. So I'm concerned about that. Now, on a federal level, I understand that my school's budget is only about 7% money from the federal government. So a couple of things we can do right away. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, founded in '74 by then President Ford, has been funded at 40% of its mandate for all of those years. We can immediately say, hey, we need to mandate. It is important. We have to provide those funds. But the federal government should provide those funds, because if they don't, the districts are doing it. Now, I can talk philosophically a bit, because a lot of this has to do with who you vote for state senate. Please vote for Papi Hernandez. And who you vote for your state rep? Please vote for Sandy Clark. Because the state of Michigan, in Lansing is where you get your dollars for your schools. About 93% of your dollars for your schools come out of Lansing. The state House Republicans had a study done, the second one they did in a couple of years, and the most recent one said it cost $9,590 to fund an education of one kid in Michigan. We currently get about $7,800 per kid in Michigan at the base foundation schools, 95% of schools, including Owego, including Spring Lake, including Muskegon Heights. So we need our state government to step up to the plate and spend more on education. The answer to every problem isn't always more money. We know that, and that isn't the only part of the solution. But dear Lord, we need to get up to that base level that we know we need to effectively be able to work around the edges on everything else we need. Now, the other part of this that concerns me greatly is the rise of the for-profit charter school system. Congressman Heisen, I haven't really delved into too much on very public statements on this. I imagine he's a very strong supporter of that. I would have to imagine that, because he's a very strong supporter of our Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos. And she gave us 20 years of the Petri dish of for-profit charter schools that has brought us from top 10 in the nation when I was in school in the 80s to bottom 10 in the nation today. They cherry pick kids, not the kids with disabilities, no, they don't have to provide for them. They cherry pick kids out of schools, and they take their money with them. Your tax money going to private schools that then take 20% of that money and take it as pure profit. We had one come in from Indiana, a cyber charter to our district, and they wanted us to authorize them. And we saw their business model, teachers making $11 a pupil, 500 kids in a classroom online. It's like taking a class through YouTube. This is the model of education that my opponent, I believe, would likely support because of the people he supports. Thank you.
There's two things that we actually agree on. One, IDEA, that has been woefully underfunded and is a travesty. It came about because of a court decision that school districts were forced to make sure that they were providing a certain level of service. The states lost in that court decision, and the federal government has not lived up to its obligation. That's a travesty. It should not happen. That's been one of the reasons why I had opposed the federal takeover of education. So I used to work for a guy named Peter Hoekstra. All right? Peter Hoekstra sat on the education committee and was one of 37 people on both sides of the aisle who voted against the No Child Left Behind Act. That was Ted Kennedy and George W. Bush's education plan. And it was a terrible plan. It was the wrong direction to go. And we need to make sure that the schools are being run by those who are closest to those schools. And that is not the federal government. Federal government does a lot of things with school lunch programs and a number of other things. And that's where, as the doctor pointed out, that it has a fraction of the overall budget, but the budget needs to be a state-generated issue. Now, Michigan is one of those states. This statistic is a couple of years old, so someone I'm sure will fact check it. Please do. But at the time, back a while ago, Michigan was one of those states that was a majority minority that was in charter schools. Meaning the majority of kids in Michigan that were in charters were minorities. And they were in that system because their parents had made the decision that the school at the local level had been failing them. Failing the students, failing the kids. And if this is really about the kids, and really about delivering education so that they can better themselves, then why don't we focus on the kids? Let the delivery begin. So, if you have the ability to make a different decision as a parent, God bless you. My wife and I have chosen to send our kids to a Christian school. Why? Because it's not appropriate in a public school to have them taught what we wanted our kids to be taught. So we made that decision. Not every parent has that decision. Right? Exactly. They can't afford it. So what is their option? What is their option? And the state, which is not exactly the federal government, again, by the way, you'd make a great candidate for a state house seat next time. Oh, come on. We're up here. At the end of the day, this is a state issue, and it needs to be a state issue.
That's not funny.
Here's a question from Spring Lake. The House budget resolution for fiscal year 2019 includes planned decreases in Social Security and Medicare benefits. How do you stand on decreasing these benefits?
So this might sound like a difficult question, but it's frankly really not. All right? Because here's why. First and foremost, we have a social and moral obligation to the folks like my mother, who's 87. Please don't tell her I told you how old she is. It's sensitive with mom. But we cannot and will not change the system on them. We can't. Right? She has no time to adjust, no time to make a different decision. I'm knocking on the door of 50. I'm 49 right now. I'm going to be 50 coming up here this year. I've got some time to adjust. All right? And as I'm moving forward, I need to make some different decisions. Our kids, our two daughters that are seniors in high school, and I've got some younger, and I know we both have some kids. Guess what? Their life expectancy, first of all, is going to be approaching 100 years. And if we don't look at the retirement system and the safety net that is in place currently, and realize that it's math, and that we have to make some adjustments, the safety net that is there currently for those that need it is going to be gone. I'm pretty sure that Warren Buffett isn't going to be eating elbow if he loses some of his benefits, Social Security benefits. So I've been an advocate, and I've talked about this publicly for a long time, looking at moving up some sort of eligibility requirement, looking at net worth, looking at what your income is. It stops right now at $143,000 or something like that they quit taking Social Security taxes out. That probably needs to get moved up. There are some small incremental things that we can do now that will truly save the safety net. Because guess what? CBO, as well as the trustees of both Social Security and Medicare, have said they know when they're running out of money. It's 16 years for Social Security, it's 8 years for Medicare. 8. And Social Security has already said that they are going to be reducing the payments to our seniors if we don't make some adjustments. Now, somebody please stand up and have the courage to say that and do something about it, because I'm trying. And guess what? Daniel Patrick Moynihan and Ronald Reagan actually did it, along with Tip O'Neill. And they extended it back in the 80s. I wasn't really paying attention to all the details at that point because I was in junior high and going into high school. But guess what? I'm sitting there right now today and know that this is an issue that we have to address. And to throw this scare tactic out about cutting Medicare and Social Security for seniors, it's a lie. It's an absolute lie, and it's not true, and which is why we are not going to allow that to happen to our current seniors. But please have the courage to look at how we come up with a solution, because America needs that solution.
So I've already given you my idea how we fix Medicare. Expanded and improved Medicare for all. We make Medicare better, we make Medicare solid. That's my idea how we do it. As far as Social Security, I have not heard you say we should raise the cap on income, and I'm surprised to hear that. It's very specific, and it is controversial. I don't think we should raise the cap. And this gets a little wonky, bear with me. I think what we can do, though, leave the cap in place, $128,400 of income right now. And then on the next, again, this is where we sit down, Republicans, Democrats across the island decide on the number, the next certain amount of income. Maybe it's people making over $500,000 a year. I think that's probably okay. People making $500,000 can probably afford to have another 6% so that all seniors can enjoy a life of dignity. Social Security keeps 40 million seniors out of poverty. The seniors now, but guess what? Also the seniors who are currently 50 and they'll need it someday. So I don't think we raise the cap because I'm worried, I'm very concerned economically. If we take people making $130,000 and we tax them 6% more, and $140,000 and $150,000, if that family of four or more is living on $140,000 a year, that tax will impact them directly. It will impact our economy. Less dollars will be spent. It's an economic concern. The family making $500,000 or more, or maybe it's higher, again, we'll have to figure out the number, they'll be okay. We don't want to have higher taxes on that middle income, and frankly, in a lot of places, middle income is getting to be somewhere in that range. You can't tax those people more, so I wouldn't raise the cap. Medicare, I said I'd make it fixed. Now I'm concerned because Congressman Heisler said it wouldn't cut Medicare, and maybe cut Medicare's argument, but significantly change Medicare is something he's voted for multiple times. 2011, voted for premium support system for those under 55 when they get on Medicare. Now he told in a debate in 2016 with Dennis Murphy that premium supports under the Affordable Care Act, that's a bailout. So he was against it, but he voted for vouchers in 2012, convert Medicare to a voucher system, giving money to seniors to spend on health care that's going up by, on average, $1,500 premiums per person on health care because of the tax cut of 2016 and the removal. So he was against it, but he voted for vouchers in 2012, convert Medicare to a voucher system, giving money to seniors to spend on health care that's going up by, on average, $1,500 premiums per person on health care because of the tax cut of 2016 and the removal of the individual mandate. We're putting more money into insurance companies that have given them the most money in corporate paychecks over his career. I don't agree with that. With the Republican Study Committee, 2012, 154 members, Congressman Heisler is in that group, they voted that they should increase the Social Security age to 70. I know Ed Muskegon, who had retired at 62, and praises the Affordable Care Act because he could retire, he could take his Social Security early at 62, would have a real problem with that. People working backbreaking jobs cannot work until 70. I could. Well, I wouldn't have to because I saved enough along the way that I wouldn't have to do that. So there's more years in here, but thank you.
This question from Fremont is about polarized politics. I like alliteration, so that's my title. Okay, at this time of polarizing politics within both parties, how do you see yourself working with the House of Representatives to move forward on the many pressing issues facing our country? And I'm joining this with, how can your participation in Congress help to mend the enormous divide that separates this country?
All right. That's an important one. In this debate, you know, I got to admit, I'm the challenger, right? This sounds like a very polarized debate. It is. We have very different views of things like healthcare, education, Social Security, environmental protections. We do. It's going to be a choice on November 6th. It will not be a choice that is muddied with a lot of unclear nuance. It's a very clear choice. And so this is maybe not a true representation of what it means to work with the other side so much. I think when you're going against someone in an election, you can't work together. You have to convince someone that you're the one they should vote for, and I get that. You know, I do feel polarization and the lack of bipartisanship has poisoned the well. It's been going on for a while, probably since '94 with the Contractor for America. Maybe every first midterm of a president gets worse because the other party swings in and takes us all the way the other. I don't want us to do that this time. I think the Democrats will take back the U.S. House of Representatives, and I'll be one of those. I don't want to do that by them taking the reins and saying, now we're in charge, we can do everything we want to do without any of you helping us. Because you know what? We're not going to be in charge forever. Just like the Republicans from 2010 are going to get to 2018 and not going to be in charge anymore. But they took off with all of these policies once they had all the reins of government, the tax cuts, attempting to take away health care, that were so bitterly partisan that it's continued to poison that well. You know, I have to say, I work in an ER in a place that voted for Donald Trump 75%. I see people all the time, and the other day I had a man come in with a Make America Great hat on. And the paramedic told him, uh-oh, Dr. Davidson's here, he's a Democrat, you guys are not going to get along. So he came in and I walked in, he said, I hear you're a Democrat. I said, yeah. And he said, he pointed at his hat, you okay with that? I said, yeah, I'll treat you anyway. He said, all right, I'll let you treat me anyway. This is how we deal with these things in real life. Congress is not real life in some ways because it's so pugilistic and we have to win, we have to win. I don't care if I get reelected, more than I care if I'm working on behalf of the people of the district. I'm just going My last statistic, and I always have to do a statistic, Congressman Heisinger had by vote, I think GovTrack.org, the least bipartisan member of the Michigan delegation. I mean, that concerns me. You know, even if you're from a district that everyone thinks is going to go for Republicans, then I promise you, people on my side that I would love to be having support me, keep telling me that. It's going to Republicans, it's going to Republicans. But just because that's the district you're in, and you think that, and you think it's your seat for life, doesn't mean you shouldn't work on behalf of the people in your district. Work with anyone on any side.
So, vote tracks how many bills you co-sponsor, not what you vote on what you co-sponsor. I'm not a big fan of window dressing, all right? I'm not a big fan of putting up a bill that makes you feel better about yourself, or maybe is fluffy for your constituents. I'm actually about results. And the simple fact is, my reputation, whether I was in the State House of Representatives or in the U.S. House of Representatives, is one of those people who crosses the aisle to go get things done. Go talk to my friend Carolyn Maloney from New York, or Greg Meeks from New York, or Ed Perlmutter from Colorado, or a number of other folks that I work with. We talk about Marcy Kaptur and the work that we've done together for the Great Lakes. That is where the proof is. All right? And by the way, you may have noticed, whether you're watching MSNBC, Fox News, CNN, or listening in on the radio, they're really about infotainment. They're not about news. And by the way, probably infotainment would be too generous. It's info conflict. That's what they want. And if you go talk to Greg Meeks, or Ed Perlmutter, or Carolyn, or Marcy, or anybody else, they will tell you the exact same thing I do, which is we get way more done behind the scenes on a bipartisan basis and have great civil conversations. And we talk all the time. I talk to them on a daily basis. I talk to a guy who is Earl Blumenauer. Okay? Any Earl Blumenauer fans in here? You should be. If you're a Bernie fan, Earl's one of those guys right up in that mold. And Earl and I couldn't be further apart in our politics, but we get along. In fact, I'm honored that every Christmas, he calls it the holidays, I call it Christmas, we exchange gifts. And that is, I'm not sure if that was for the gifts or Christmas or the holidays, but anyway, the simple fact is we get along way better and try to get things done on behalf of our constituents than is ever portrayed in the media. It's just a simple fact. So as I'm working on these things, I keep that in mind. I keep in mind you all, even though we might not agree, okay? Now we've had a couple of town hall meetings where some folks have said, you're not listening because you don't agree with me. Don't confuse agreement with not taking the effort to listen. You may find it because we can turn that right around on you and say, if you don't agree with me, you're not listening to me. And I know that's not the case. So, because we disagree and we've come up with different conclusions to these difficult answers, doesn't mean that we aren't listening to each other.
This question comes from Kentwood. But it came in other forms from elsewhere also. It's about faith in government. Lately, it seems that more and more people have become disinterested in politics and don't trust government, whether it be local, state, or federal, to act in their best interest. This is particularly true among young voters. How do you propose restoring the faith of the American people, and especially the younger generation?
I think it's me, yeah. It's a little bit of a continuation of what we were just talking about. You know, what has really changed has been the speed and velocity and volume of information. Anybody remember Watergate? All right. So, guess what? I've got the privilege of serving a good chunk of what was Gerald Ford's old district. My earliest political memory is sitting at the table trying to figure out why my older brother and sister were arguing with my dad about some guy who my dad knew who became vice president, some place called Vietnam, and something called the Watergate. All right? This is not the first time that we have been polarized as a nation. In fact, I would argue that if you look back at our history, this is not the most polarized time. However, again, that speed and velocity and nastiness, because frankly, people say things on, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or whatever, I would hope they don't mean. And if they mean it, the odds on bet is they wouldn't have the guts, let's call it that, to say it to your face, right? And the civility element has gone completely out the window. And that's what kids are looking at. I've got 2 college kids, 2 high school kids, and a 7th grader. Their BS detector is pretty sensitive, all right? And because they've grown up with it. They've seen it in commercials, they've seen it in their own families, they've seen it all around them. And that's what they're frustrated with. They get honesty, all right? They get honesty. They don't like spin. And guess what? That is something, if you look at what my kids have helped teach me, it is to be upfront. It's to be open. And guess what? When you were asking the question, Rich, about faith in government, I thought it might be religious faith. But that is something that's near and dear to me as well. And because we are willing to put our beliefs out there, I, for one, am willing to lose this seat without giving up a core value. All right? So, if you don't like me because I'm pro-life, that's okay. If you don't like me because I'm too Christian, that's okay. If you don't like me because whatever other purpose that you have dreamed up, that's okay. All right? So I'm willing to stand for what I believe, and it's a very public job review that happens every 2 years. If you were so fortunate, you get that same job review. And this is part of the wonderful element of our representative republic. So I'm glad you're here, I'm glad you participated. You may come up with a different conclusion, But let's please all try to help restore faith for those kids in our system.
Thanks. Yeah, so just a statistic for you here. You're telling the numbers nerd. They've been doing the National Election Survey since 1958. And one of the questions asked is, do you believe your government is looking out for you most of the time or all of the time? 1958, 73% of people believe that. I believe 2018, maybe 2017, 18% of people believe that. So right now, less than 1/5 of people believe their government is looking out for them most of the time or all of the time. I don't know why that is. I'm not going to blame it on MSNBC or Fox. I honestly don't want, nowadays I don't watch any of them. I can't. I got too many other things going on with this campaign. But I agree, they're about headlines, they're about, I see breaking news at the bottom of the screen, something I knew 3 days ago. And it's all of a sudden breaking news because they want you to watch that hour of programming so those advertisers can pay them more money for the time. But what I do believe, a big part of why people don't trust their government is they wonder, are these people we're electing looking out for us or looking out for someone else? I gotta get back to this because that's to me the ultimate job of a representative. It's a big responsibility. It's not one that I take lightly. I mean, I kind of jumped in with both feet into this race, and yet over the past 20 months that I've been running, you realize how many people depend on you when you are going to be their representative. I've heard stories from my supporters who said when they asked Congressman Huizenga why he didn't believe this or the other, that he said, I represent the people who voted for me, and every 2 years you have a job review. That concerns me. I don't know, I'm saying that because I heard it at least 3 times from 3 very people I trusted. And that concerns me when that's said. And so then you have to look back and look at the corporate PAC donations to someone's campaign and how they vote on healthcare bills, on banking bills, on tax bills, whose effects are only felt by 6% of workers, who overwhelmingly effects are felt by the people who don't need the help, by large multinational corporations. A few people have gotten bonuses, a few people have gotten raises, the vast majority have not seen an increase in wages in over 40 years. Wages have not gone up for 40 years, corporate profits have soared. I'm concerned when I see reports that there may have been improper spending by our member of Congress from their campaign finance accounts. Spending at resorts, spending on fancy meals. We see Facebook posts showing dates that match up, showing when those meals were purchased using campaign funds, and that has to erode people's confidence in that individual. It's a big reason why I took the no corporate PAC check pledge. Now, they're not coming for me now, but they will if I win. And you have my word now that I will still not take their money. Thank you.
Good news, gentlemen. We've been so efficient with our timing and our responses that there's time for a bonus question. This is the one that I held out for. What is your understanding of the constitutional role of Congress in governing the United States of America? Huh?
I think I'm first, yeah. You know, the Constitution is a big document, right? 3 articles. Article 1 tells us what Congress is supposed to do. I looked at all the amendments, and we talked a little bit about guns in the Second Amendment. I will vow to uphold every amendment when I take my oath of office. I've taken an oath in medicine that I have upheld for 20 years. I will take an oath of office to uphold every amendment for every person in my district. The piece of the Constitution that I find particularly interesting and the most guiding for me as I enter into this world is Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, to provide for the common defense and promote the general welfare. Now, we do a heck of a job providing for the common defense. It's the most powerful military in the world. We certainly fund them plenty. Now, there may be $21 trillion that needs to be audited, and I don't know that that's happened yet, but I certainly hope it does. We fund our military. We will continue to fund our military. We hopefully will only use that military in times of need, and we will use diplomacy so so that we don't have to use the military. But promoting the general welfare is such a big idea, right? Politics is about big ideas. Elections should be about big ideas. I have not told you one thing tonight I'm going to do. I've told you many things I would like to do. I've given you the idea of my philosophy of what government should represent in our lives, and promoting the general welfare should be of the utmost importance when we're thinking about what our government does in our lives. That doesn't mean giving us things. It means creating opportunity so the kid of Muskegon Heights in their schools that are struggling have the same opportunity as my kids born in their zip code. We create opportunity by making sure people make not just a living wage, a thriving wage. Again, 40 years, wages have not changed one bit relative to inflation. Profits have soared. We need to make sure they have a thriving wage. We need to make sure our kids have access to public education that is good public education with small class sizes, that is free from violence. We need to make sure everybody has health care. A basic idea that everybody has health care they can afford. So when I think about putting my hand in a Bible, swearing an oath to God in front of my country and my family, that I will uphold the ideals present in that living, breathing document of the Constitution, I will think most to that piece, Article 1, Section 8. What can I do every day to promote the general welfare of every single person in this room and in this district? Thank you.
So I'm going to take this moment to again point out this is a great opportunity for all of us, right? This is an opportunity for all of us to be involved in our own government. And when I talk about my job review, that's exactly what I'm talking about. I go out and I listen. I try to understand where people are coming from. I then use my judgment and my experience to come up with a conclusion, all right? And our voting that oftentimes we have to do in Washington, D.C. is not good choice versus bad choice. Frankly, oftentimes it's bad choice versus really bad choice. And you have to go figure it out. So I know what I believe, but I also know why I believe it. And I appreciate the opportunity to explore that with people and to have that conversation. The simple fact is the U.S. House is part of a stool that goes forward where you have to have the House come up with an agreement, the Senate come up with an agreement, and then it goes on to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue where you have to have whoever is in the White House agree on that. It's a very difficult process, actually. It takes a long time. We will vote on thousands of bills in the House of Representatives. Thousands this term. There's precious few that actually will make it across the finish line. I've had 3 of them. 2 of them were signed by Barack Obama, and the 3rd one was signed by Donald Trump. And we're this close on a couple of other bills. Why? Because I'm able to work across the aisle. And by the way, the bill that you had sort of dinged me on, 2155, I hope when you had your fundraiser at the home of the head of Planned Parenthood in West Michigan with Debbie Stabenow, you asked her why she voted for 2155 as well, as did Gary Peters. Those are conversations that we had, and it was the right vote. It's been portrayed as somehow a big bank bailout, but you better go ask that question if you're voting for Debbie Stabenow or Gary Peters, why they would support that as well. It was the right decision. Not the easiest decision. Quite honestly, oftentimes in Washington, D.C., the easiest decision is to say no. No to everything. It's never good. It's never perfect. Don't make the good the enemy, or don't make the perfect the enemy of the good. And as we're moving forward, that is what with the balance that we have to have. We have a constitution, as has been outlined, exactly what those powers are. I continue to live by that Constitution as to what is right and what is wrong for us to be doing in Washington, D.C. And I'll continue to do that, and I'll continue to fight for our Constitution.
Colleen just reminded me that we promised each candidate a closing statement, 5 minutes. Go ahead.
All right, we're going to make an executive decision, which is we're going to take 3 minutes each. We're getting close to our time. Yeah, that got applause. Well, yes, the 3 minutes is constitutional. Yes, as would be 5. Well, thank you. Thank you for being here. We may not always agree, and that's okay. But we're having an exchange of ideas, which is the key element to this. I want to say thank you to supporters that are here, those that have given me this opportunity in the past. I'm asking for that support again. I hope I will have your vote. I hope that I have been trustworthy. I hope that I have been open with you to let you know where I'm coming from and why I'm doing this. You're starting to see some smears out there about character and different things like that. I think it's deplorable what the state party at the direction of my opponent did, trying to somehow mash together this accusation of misusing funds, which is absolutely ridiculous. So I know the direction that we are on now, the path that we are on policy is the right direction for our country. We are seeing greater prosperity. We are seeing greater freedom and liberty and greater opportunity for others. This is about opportunity. The general welfare statement in the Constitution isn't about food stamp welfare. It's about opportunity welfare. That's what the general welfare means. That's what it means in the Constitution. Opportunity for people. Not that the government's going to do this. And one of the so-called proposals or solutions for Medicare is to have over 50% of the entire economy of the United States be taken over by the government if you add in this Medicare scheme and all the other things that the federal government's currently doing. That isn't liberty and freedom and opportunity. That's the definition of socialism, if I've ever heard it. And that's the wrong direction to go. That is absolutely the wrong direction to go. We have got to be about freedom, liberty, and opportunity. And I appreciate your vote. Thank you.
It took an hour and a half till we heard the other words. I was expecting that a lot sooner. As long as we're doing digs on things that happened before, 23,000 of our military families are in what you call food stamps, now called supplemental nutrition. And you voted against the 2.3 raise and to ensure pay and the shutdown in 2015 for military members. I apologize, I wrote this down because it came to me and others that we worked with, so I'm just going to read it, I apologize. I chose to run for Congress because of an idea. The idea is a simple one, that we can enjoy greater freedom and liberty if we aren't held back by avoidable debt and preventable disease. In my ER, I see dozens of times every night how our broken healthcare system has let down the hardworking folks who walk in with an injury that will set them back hundreds or thousands of dollars or an illness that has finally flared up at 2 in the morning, but it could have been nipped in the bud if only that patient had gone to a doctor 6 months earlier, but they didn't because they couldn't afford a copay. I'm running because of the mom who came to my ER, true story, after midnight with her child because that was the only time she could use the one car that 3 families share down her street. I'm running for the truck driver who worked 70 hours a week, but he couldn't afford a $100 inhaler. He came in clutching that inhaler, but the next morning he had to get back on the road for another long-haul trip because he didn't have any time off. I'm running for the 7-year-old woman who came in with a blood sugar in the 400s because the price of her insulin went up arbitrarily 6 months earlier and she's been taking it every other day. I'm running for all the folks who've ever had to worry about whether they could afford a life-saving surgery or a test to determine whether they're about to have a stroke or folks who can't afford their child's asthma medication. For those of you in the audience who've ever had to make these difficult choices, or folks at home, I hear you. For those who have to choose between buying the groceries and buying your insulin, yet wonder why insurance company CEOs are the highest paid, I hear you. For those of you who work hard, care for your loved ones, play by the rules, and simply want a fair shake so you are not squeezed day after day by big banks, big insurance companies, by drug makers, and by Wall Street corporations, I hear you. Today, more than at any time in our history, as Americans, large corporations are tying us down with invisible shackles. Medical bills, student loan debt, ballooning mortgage rates, and meanwhile wages are stuck and commodity prices stay low. To keep us from noticing how the system is rigged, to distract us from the tax loopholes and the culture of corruption, politicians pit us against each other. We're too busy fighting about some grievance on Facebook to notice that our wages are the same today as they were 40 years ago. We're too distracted by manufactured controversy to recognize that most of the benefits of the booming economy have gone to the very top. And we're too busy looking for the things that divide us to notice that we're all in the same boat. We're all held down by the shackles of a rigged economy. Thank you.
Thank you for indeed conducting ourselves in the way we're accustomed to conducting ourselves in this part of Michigan. So thank you. I have a quick one more announcement if you'd indulge me, please. I promised some important people that I would announce this. You are invited to attend the Newaygo County Youth-Led Candidate Forum on Friday morning, October 19, at the Dogwood Center for the Performing Arts in Fremont. Students from the Fremont Area Community Foundation's Youth Advisory Committee will join peers from Newaygo and Grant High School government classes and Project Focus in Hart and Muskegon Heights to develop and ask questions of the candidates for Michigan State Senate District 34 and Michigan's 100th District State House seat. The youth-led forum will run from 9:30 to 11 a.m. And while the opportunity to speak and ask questions at the forum is reserved for the youth representatives, you are invited to attend the event and hear the conversation and topics that are discussed. So I just wanted you all to know about that, an opportunity to hear the forum of the state legislative candidates.